Yeah, just because it can fit a fat kid doesn't mean it necessarily should. And every single time I close this thing, it's going to pinch my cheeks really bad. Still looks pretty cool, though. Especially when it's closed. Ow. Ever since I saw this thing floating around on Facebook, I knew I had to have one, and luckily for me, TacticalXmen.com literally just sent this out for me to do a video on, and I am very, very happy about that, because this thing is cool. This thing is beyond cool. It does some things that I necessarily haven't seen before in a product like this, but I do have to thank TacticalXmen.com for sending this out to me, because this is really, really cool, and unfortunately, it's also kind of pricey. Is it pricey for what it does? Well, you're gonna have to be the judge of that, but in my opinion, it's really cool, and it might be something you want to take a look at. But this is the Mark 42 prototype 1-to-1 scale helmet, and it is, of course, an Iron Man helmet. It's meant to look like Iron Man. This is not an officially licensed product, but it is really, really faithful to being the Iron Man. Even says Stark Industries on there, so take that at what you will. However, I have looked far and wide, and I haven't been able to find a helmet, at least like a commercial one, that does what this one does. It does something that other helmets don't do, which you probably figured out by the intro, but if you skip that for some reason, well, I'll just show you the helmet. This is just the box. It comes like this. You can open it up, and then you get a piece of styrofoam, and then the helmet would be in there. There's a little bag that says Iron Man on it. It's kind of cool, but no instructions or anything in this box. I don't know if that's just my box, but yeah, there were no instructions in here. It was actually pretty difficult to figure out what I was supposed to do. In fact, originally, when I got this thing, I didn't know what to do. Luckily, my friend Michael from Armored Nerf showed me exactly what this thing is supposed to do. So we've got an Iron Man helmet. Yeah, I would say that looks like an Iron Man to me. I'm not like a huge fan of Iron Man or anything like that, but I have dabbled. I know what the character is for the most part, so that should be something else you should probably take into consideration with this review, because I'm not like a huge fan of comics and Iron Man and stuff like that, and I'm still really happy with this thing. So we're gonna have to start with what this helmet is and isn't before we get too far into things. What this helmet is an amazing cosplay piece. An absolutely amazing, if you wanted to play an Iron Man, or just have like a really cool Iron Man helmet that does something really neat, then this is something for you. But if you're looking for some kind of airsoft grade armor, something that you could wear to a war, like a Nerf war, airsoft, whatever, and you wanted to look cool and have something kind of interesting at the same time, I don't think this is that, because the entire construction of this helmet is made out of plastic. You can kind of see where it's screwed together and stuff right there, but it is just, it's relatively thick plastic, but it is plastic. It's not fiberglass or anything like that. It's just a cool little helmet that, it is kind of that brittle feeling plastic as well. You can kind of tell it's really lightweight for what it is, but I wouldn't trust this thing to take a fall or anything like that, so keep that in mind. Not that it's advertised to be anything more than a cool little cosplay piece, but well, yeah, it is a cool little cosplay piece. It's powered by 4 AAA batteries, which are held in this little battery box right here. It has its own on-off switch if you want to deal with that, but it has another on-off switch which is much easier to activate, so you just kind of stuff that in there, and this whole liner inside the helmet is held in with Velcro on pretty much every side, so it is possible to take this Velcro out. It does have a little switch right here on the side, which when I turn on, it's going to shut the lid if it's not already. Yep, it does do that. And it's going to glow the eyes. And if you look really carefully, well, you can't really see except for this little spot down here. You actually look below the eyes with this helmet to see out of it. And I'm going to tell you straight up, the field of view is not great. You can't see a whole lot out of this thing. Which is, well, that's what it is. It's not really meant to do a whole lot more than what it does. So it does look amazing. Absolutely amazing. If you look at this thing head on, it looks like Iron Man. People are going to probably wonder how you see out of this thing, if at all. You can't see anything. It's pretty claustrophobic in there. Not that that's a huge bad thing. I mean, it's functional. That's what it's supposed to be. But the coolest part is it does come with this weird little ring, and you might be like, well, what is this for? For my helmet, if you buy one of these, it was actually stuck to a magnet on the right-hand side over here where the switch isn't, the opposite side. It was actually stuck in here underneath the liner, which was probably the safest place for it to be. But of course, the entire point of this helmet is that it does a really cool gimmick, which is... yeah. So there's actually some kind of magnetic switch here. The ring is magnetic, and when it gets even close to that sensor, it pops open the front of the helmet. And that is just so cool. It is... oh, and it's seriously, that is mind-blowing the first time it happens. And I've had this for a few days now, and I have not gotten bored of that. That is so freaking cool. Such an ingenious little mech. It could just have a button, like, especially underneath here, could just have a push button or something. Nope. No. Let's make it a magnetic switch just because we can. Which, yeah, that's awesome. That is really, really cool in the entire gimmick of this helmet. It doesn't do anything else other than light up and have that cool little feature. Now, with this one in particular, I'm not sure what it is. It opens fine, I would say. I don't know if it's like too much power for the AAAs. It seems like after a while of this thing being on, it gets a little bit slower opening and closing it. And usually when that happens, I have to turn it off, then turn it back on. But if I leave it up and then I turn it on, it closes with a vengeance. I'm not quite sure what that's about. I'm not sure if it's supposed to do that or not. And to be perfectly honest, when this thing came in, it was a little bit rough. The whole mechanism for holding this switch in there is held in with hot glue, and it was flopping around. I had to re-hot glue it. There are some minor scratches over the helmet. Those are definitely fixable. There's no heavy pockmarks or anything wrong with the actual molding. Just some minor paint scuffs here or there, which, you know, maybe that's what you want because it makes it look more like a battle-worn helmet. I'm not quite sure. The paint itself is really nice. At least this red part is. There's some decent panel lining going on too with this thing. Nothing really glaringly bad, just little tiny scuffs here or there, which brings into the question the fact that is this thing necessarily worth your $130? And that's a question that you're gonna have to ask yourself, because again, finding something that does what this helmet does, like if I were to compare it to the Marvel Legends helmet, it doesn't have this kind of mechanism on it. You can see, yeah, it's... maybe my batteries are just dead, but I've tried like 4 sets of AAAs. Maybe one in each one of these sets is dead, but is this necessarily worth it? Because like the Marvel Legends one, which was probably more faithful to the actual Iron Man thing, just has a magnetic snap-on mask. This one opens up and does that cool thing, and if you were like a prop builder or something like that, you could probably do some really cool things to get this up to exactly where you want it. But that's all it does. I mean, it's a cool helmet, it looks awesome, it opens up, the eyes light up, all that stuff you can see out of it, although it is rather difficult. But it doesn't do anything beyond that. I mean, I couldn't find any other helmet that had that kind of opening mechanism, so I could find people who like 3D printed their own helmets and built it themselves and made it do that, but nothing quite like this. And yes, this thing is a very tight fit. That's probably its biggest con, is that to get this thing on originally, it kind of went like this. And that was not great. And I found out through Michael that you have to kind of pinch the sides in over here, and you pull off. It's not... there we go. Yeah, it's a little... oh, I'm so scared of breaking this. There we go. It is really thick plastic, but it does have 2 pieces, so you actually have to pull that back off, put this on your head, and then desperately try to put this thing back on. And it's really, for me, I mean, I have a fat face and everything like that. I have a pretty fat head. Finding a hat that fits me is relatively difficult. It doesn't fit at all. Now, if you have like a Brett-sized head, I think this would fit absolutely perfectly, but I don't. My head is actually rather massive, so I'm gonna say a normal adult, it can probably fit you, but again, if you have problems finding hats that fit, don't even give this a shot. I do know that Tactical X-Men is going to be adding a sizing chart to their website, but it is, oh, it's a very, very tight fit, and I'm really worried about breaking the tabs of this off, because again, they're just plastic. They're not like any kind of fiberglass or anything like that, and if you're not careful with this thing, it is going to break, and it would be very sad if that happened. But it is really cool. So basically, my recommendation for this thing is, did that mechanism sell you on this? Then yeah, it's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be worth it if you have an Iron Man cosplay and you don't have anything like this and you really want to make people turn their head when they see you at a convention, because that's just too cool. But I'm not gonna say it's something that absolutely everybody has to get, especially if you're looking for something that's like a functional piece of armor. I would say this would probably work for some kind of Nerf war. I would not trust this with airsoft whatsoever, but I would be worried about taking like a 200 FPS worker dart to this thing and it like jamming the mechanism or something like that, or maybe even cracking the plastic. That's entirely possible because it is not really like absorbent plastic. It definitely has that feeling like if I wanted to break it in half, I definitely could, and it would have to be super glued back together, which would obviously ruin the entire point of this thing. It's cool. It's really cool, but is it worth it to you? That's something you're gonna have to decide. I'm not even like a big fan of Iron Man or anything like that, and this thing is going on my shelf because it just looks so freaking cool. I really want to know if you're a fan of Iron Man, if this kind of mechanism is enough to push you over the edge to buying something like this. But let me know down in that comment section below. Otherwise, I'm Walcom S7. Thank you very much for watching this video, and of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different one.
You gotta